Now, before I discuss the policy roadmap that we are releasing today, I want to address the tragedy that unfolded on the streets of Biddeford this morning. Now, details are still emerging, but we know that an individual lost his life during an encounter involving ICE agents near Poole Street. Presente, Maine has identified the individual as a 26-year-old male who, again, according to Presente, did in fact have a work permit and a social security card. Again, that is per Presente, Maine. Right now, a family is facing unimaginable grief, a community is in profound shock, and our nation is at pains to understand how a federal operation escalated to a fatal force at a local Main street. I just am coming from Biddeford, from a community action at Mechanics Park, and there are a lot of folks who are scrambling for answers right now. What I think everyone shares is that this should never happen. Not in Biddeford, not in Houston, as it did last week, not in Minneapolis, not in America, and certainly not in 2026. And of course, definitely not at the hands of ICE, a broken, unaccountable, rogue agency that has shown itself incapable of discharging its mission safely. Now, as the son of immigrants, these ICE raids and the tragedy that unfolded this morning, they strike a particularly personal chord. I grew up watching my parents build a life here, and I know firsthand what it means to believe in the promise of an America from the ground up. The journey of every single immigrant family is driven by the faith that here, under the rule of law, you can live with safety, fairness, and with human dignity. When a federal law enforcement operation ends in the loss of life right here in our own backyard, it fractures that sense of safety for everyone. And when a crisis of this nature occurs, the public deserves, if not demands, absolute truth. The FBI and Maine State Police have confirmed that an investigation is in fact underway. What must occur now is that that investigation be transparent, rapid, and independent. What we need to know is why this escalated, whether body cameras were worn, whether those body cameras were activated, and what led to a catastrophic outcome in what has otherwise been described as a routine stop. What must not be allowed to happen is that deaths of this nature, which have become all too common in Donald Trump's America, at the hands of federal ICE agents, that those deaths become normalized. That must not be allowed to happen. My question is simple. How many more people must be fatally shot and murdered by ICE agents before we admit that it is time for a change? True leadership requires the courage to say that the way things are working is not working, and that our federal government systems must be rebuilt from the ground up to ensure transparency, order, and justice for every person who calls Maine their home. My thoughts right now are with the loved ones of the individual who was killed today and with the people of Biddeford who are carrying this weight on their shoulders. Now, it is precisely because of the failures of our current leadership in Washington, which in the case of Senator Susan Collins has spent 3 decades allowing our core institutions to fracture and fail. It is because of that that we are here today to discuss a roadmap, a policy roadmap for structural change. Now, I am running for the U.S. Senate because life in Maine has gotten steadily more expensive even after 30 years of Susan Collins being in Washington. She has made her choice about who she serves every time she votes with President Trump, which is 95% of the time. Mainers pay the price. Every time she supports one of his cuts, a rural hospital inches closer to closing, and a senior pays more for life-saving prescriptions. What's clear is that over her 3 decades in office, Senator Collins has lost her way and has decided to answer to drug companies, insurance giants, and the corporate donors who profit from this squeeze. I am running to be the opposite of Senator Collins. Today, we are laying out 22 concrete policy priorities that will, taken together, help build an affordable, safe future where every Mainer can get ahead. And I will answer to nobody but the people of this state. I'm going to take a second to talk about these into three different pillars. The first pillar is one that lowers costs and protects hard-earned benefits. Our first priority is immediate cost relief and protecting what Mainers have spent their lives earning. Healthcare is a right and not a privilege, and we will pass Medicare for all, keep our rural hospitals open, and end the era of insurance companies standing between patients and their doctors. We will protect and expand Social Security, not cut it, no eligibility age increases, and avoid privatizing it, in fact, oppose privatizing it. Instead, we will scrap the cap so that millionaires pay in on every dollar just like a nurse or a lobsterman does. And we will honor our promise in Maine to our veterans by reversing the Trump administration's gutting of the VA and fully staff togus as well as rural VA clinics, and end veteran homelessness in Maine. A benefit earned in uniform is a promise, not a line item. The second pillar invests in Maine's workers, working families, and in our communities. We must invest directly in the people who keep Maine running. We will cut the cost for working families by expanding the child care tax credit, guaranteeing paid family and medical leave, and treating universal child care like the economic infrastructure that it is, raising pay for child care workers so providers can keep their doors open. We will build affordable housing, slash red tape, and crack down on the private equity firms that are buying up houses across this country. We will also pass the PRO Act to protect the right to organize, certainly from the shipbuilders at Bath Iron Works, as well as to our nurses and paper mill workers across the state. And we will raise the federal minimum wage and index it to the cost of living. Most importantly, as folks recall from our prior work, we will fully fund our public schools and steadfastly oppose any effort to impose or embrace vouchers that divert even a single penny of public money for private charter schools. We will also raise teacher pay, not just in Maine, but nationwide, and again, reject the voucher schemes that drain money from public education. And third, we will bring Washington toward an era of accountability and reform. We cannot fix policy until we root out the corruption in Washington. And we will hold the administration accountable when it ignores the law and or defies the courts. Using the Senate's real oversight powers, whether that's subpoenas, hearings, and of course votes, not just strongly worded statements expressing feigned concern. And we will fix a rigged tax code so that the super wealthy and big corporations finally pay their fair share. Most importantly, we are going to ban members of Congress and their staff from trading stocks or betting on the prediction markets, and close the revolving door for lobbyists, and make sure that no one should hold a Senate seat for 30 years. I will fight to pass term limits for every member of Congress. Public office is a public trust, not a career. Thank you all for coming. I welcome all of your questions. Phil?
You have some federal government experience. You mentioned that the other day in the healthcare field. But do you feel like you know enough about how the Senate works and all of its arcane rules and so forth? I mean, you're dealing with an opponent who's obviously an expert at that.
Yes. I don't, in my time at the U.S. CDC, I had the opportunity to work very closely with the Senate. Now, I suspect that the only folks who know every arcane rule of the U.S. Senate are U.S. senators. And so, of course, like any incoming member of Congress, whether in the House or the Senate, there are going to be things I'm going to have to learn about the day-to-day operations. What matters are the policy priorities that I come in the door with, and knowing in general how to take an idea, move it into committee, get the bill passed, and actually make systemic change. That's what I had to do on the outside when I was at Maine CDC. Work with the U.S. CDC. Work with the U.S. Senate so that we could translate our priorities. In my case, one of the top ones was enhancing our pandemic preparedness priorities, so that I could take those ideas and work with the Senate and translate them into actual legislation. That's the experience that I've had, and I'm confident that on day one, I would be able to take action and advance many of these policy priorities, specifically Medicare for all.
Do you think, this is a nice question. Do you think funding for ICE should be withheld? Should ICE be defunded until they agree to concrete reforms, as your predecessor advocated for? Like, he was willing to shut down the government over some of this stuff. What's your threshold for this stuff?
Thank you for that question, and the answer is yes. So let me, so with an unequivocal hesitation, the answer is yes. I believe Senator Collins erred in appropriating $70 billion to ICE that goes through January of 2029 through the entirety of the Trump administration. Were I in the Senate, I would vote no on any appropriations for ICE. They have proven themselves unable and incapable of discharging their mission in a manner that does not result in the murder of Americans and other citizens. By definition, they have lost their way, and so they should not be funded. They should be broken down, dismantled, and built back up in a new way that actually respects the rule of law, targets those who are actual threats to this country, and avoids demonizing and, as we saw today, killing somebody who is a newcomer to the United States. So the answer, again, for extreme clarity, is that I would not vote for a single dollar of appropriations to ICE until and unless they can demonstrate that they are able to discharge their mission. Thus far, they have been incapable of doing so, and the only thing that leadership requires at this moment is that they be dismantled.
Even if that led to a broader government shutdown that affected agencies outside of ICE?
I would have to evaluate what that would be. Of course, any shutdown is troubling. In the last shutdown, it was limited to DHS. Of course, it had spillover effects that we saw with air traffic. So there's going to have to be a balance. But again, I think my answer to your question is yes, even if it did result in a shutdown. Anything short of that is essentially placing a value on life. And it was what you're effectively saying is, well, according to The Guardian, there have been 10 fatal shootings in the second Trump administration at the hands of ICE. AP puts the number at 8. So there's anywhere from 8 to 10 individuals who have been killed because of ICE raids. And if you take the position that we should not shut down the federal government, then what you are saying is that those numbers of 8 to 10 people, that's just not enough people. And that is absolutely morally unacceptable. And so I refuse to say, well, that's not enough death and destruction. That is a cowardly position, and I will not embrace it. Yes?
Senator Tammy Duckworth said that she would not support your candidacy, went back and pose it earlier or late last week. Have you had a chance to speak with Senator Duckworth since she made this statement?
No, I have not. And, my thought on this is that, first of all, I don't think Democrats are helped with other Democrats criticizing Democrats. More importantly, we are going through this process in Maine. I am pleased with the process that the Maine Democratic Party has laid out, and I know the people of Maine know me. They know every one of these issues. They have been talked about extensively, both when I was Maine CDC director as well as during the prior primary, and I'm confident they know me and they've seen me show up for them. That's ultimately what matters.
You're going to have to tackle foreign policy.
Yes.
We're not going to talk about all 190 nations in the world here, but maybe you want to just give us a tease on your views on the Iran war and maybe Ukraine. Good. Obviously, Senator Graham, who just died over the weekend,
was just there.
Came back from Ukraine.
Yes. Yes.
One of the people wanting more intervention, more support. What's your view?
Phil, there's a reason you and I get along, and that's because you always ask the question that I wish I could talk about today. But stay tuned.
Are you not going to answer?
I'm going to. Phil, have I ever not answered one of your questions? But stay tuned, because This is a topic that I am very eager to discuss more. But let me say this right now as to my general worldview, and then answer both of those specifically. Donald Trump, and again, aided and abetted by Susan Collins, has weakened our posture in the world. And as a result of that, other countries, in many cases our adversaries, have filled that void and that vacuum in leadership. And we are all weaker and less safe as a result of it. When I was at the U.S. CDC, I saw firsthand the risks of America abdicating its leadership role in a specific area, healthcare, and what can happen is that China and Russia and our other adversaries fill that void. And so the Trump administration has made us less safe by pulling back. All that said, specific to the two questions that you raised, my view on the war in Iran is that this, and this is noted in the document that we are releasing, we've got at least one bullet on reckless foreign wars. And the three areas that I'll comment on, Phil, to your question. Number one, the war in Iran. This was an elective war. And as it relates to Mainers, this war has done nothing for them. It has only resulted in a spike in food, beef, gasoline, and fertilizer and diesel costs, all of which hit Mainers' pocketbooks at a time when everything else is rising. Lobstermen are paying more for diesel. Loggers are paying more for diesel. Farmers are paying, and by one account, up to 40% more for fertilizer as we get ready for the next planting. So the war in Iran has been a reckless, elective misadventure that is directly harming Mainers. With respect to the Ukraine, with the war in Ukraine, I would be a strong supporter of continuing assistance to Ukraine. Ukraine has been a longstanding ally of ours. And again, if we allow Putin's regime to continue its encroachment, then that lesson, the lesson that Putin will draw, is that more is possible. This is the mistake of the 1930s when the Sudetenland was allowed to be captured, and that led to a series of dominoes falling across Eastern Europe. So we have to stand firm in our resolve to support Ukraine because of the stakes that are at hand, to say nothing of the human tragedy. And though you didn't ask it, it is noted in the document with respect to the war in Gaza, as I think you've heard me say, but just to say for clarity again, I lived in Southeast Asia in a period that in Cambodia was recovering from the genocide that had occurred 20 years prior. I have seen, unfortunately, the scars, the emotional toll that a genocide can take. And when I look at what's unfolding in Gaza right now, there is no question in my mind that it is a genocide. Every time one of these events occurs, whether it was Cambodia, whether it was Rwanda, or now in Gaza, the world says the very same thing: never again. But we're not saying that right now for Gaza, and we should be.
Sorry if I missed it at the top.
Yeah.
My editor sent me a message, but did you touch on position on taxing billionaires and things like that?
Good.
This policy rollout.
It is in there. But since you asked, I like to go deep when I can. In the gubernatorial race, I embraced a millionaire's tax. I transfer that same taxation principle now to the federal level. My general principle with these things is those who can pay more should pay more. And so, yes, that extends to a billionaire's income tax. That is correct. To say nothing of I want to be clear, there's an intermediate tax bracket between the top bracket right now, which is, I think, 550, I have to check on that, and $1 billion. So we're talking about the imposition of a couple of additional brackets in the progressive tax structure we have, not just where it stands right now, and then the next leap is at $1 billion. So.